After studying in detail the main sacred texts of the 5 major religions practiced in the world today, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism and Hinduism, Mrad came to the conclusion that most religious people blindly follow the doctrine, words and traditions handed down to them by their ancestors.
The Torah that exists in the hands of today's Jews includes divine teachings, but also some strange whispers. The same is true of the Bible and the Quran. This came about through God's will to test our ability to use His biggest gifts to us, mind, heart and soul, and also as a result of His desire for fair competition between the devils and humans. Satan was allowed to whisper in the ears and minds of all the prophets and messengers so that he couldn't complain later that God had guided us all the way, and that was the only reason why we were doing good things.
Basically there is no need for religion, but as the cycles of time passed, and because human beings appear to be weaker than expected, God has had to interfere from time to time, sending the Spirit with some hints to guide us back towards the truth and eternity. But to be fair, in this game of existence, Satan was also allowed to use the same weapon as the Spirit in order to deceive us. The divisions between human beings were meant to take place and to last for ages because only in darkness can God identify His best creatures. God is our direct creator and the creator of the multiverse we live in. And when He created us as human beings, He was seeking to create individuals who have the ability to be good, sensitive, creative, generous, progressive, sincere and above all intelligent. The best of us will be rewarded after death by joining God's eternal family of innovators and creators and architects, while the worst of us will be punished for their sins and their wasted lifetimes as their deeds deserve. Each of the middle way people will also be given the reward their deeds deserve. God is just and He is merciful, so as much as we do good are we rewarded, and as much as we do bad are we punished. Each person will be judged upon his deeds, and no prophets or saints will be able to remove his sins. When Christians say Jesus was crucified to erase their sins, they are completely mistaken, because there is true justice in heaven and there are no green cards up there for anyone, not even for Jesus Himself. The same belief is found among Muslims, who believe that Muhammad is the best of messengers and will rescue them on the Day of Judgment, but they will be surprised when they see Muhammad himself being judged like everybody else in God's hands.
Now, you may be asking the question, if the prophets and messengers are not perfect, why were holy books and teachings sent to them? The answer is because of God's wish to test our hearts, minds and souls to see if we will recognize Him through His magnificent creations or remain slaves shackled by the chains of organized religions and the confused and contradicted teachings they incorporate.
If you read each holy book carefully, you will feel 2 voices speaking to you. One is calling you towards peace, the other pushing you to war. One advises you to seek science and knowledge, the other orders you to be obedient and not complain. One is advising you to forgive your enemy, the other tells you to hate him back. One says that God is one and unique, and that all humans were created from one soul and are brothers. The other shows different faces of God and points to the differences between teachings, convincing you that you are the best and the chosen one, while other humans of different beliefs are bad and will be punished. One voice is teaching you how to live your life and to be good to other creatures around you, and another is ordering you to make sacrifices and shed blood if you want to please God.
Here comes the test. The people with light in their hearts will follow the peaceful voice, which is the true voice of God, so they spend their lives in helping others, in giving, in sharing, in doing charitable works, in praying for forgiveness if they have committed mistakes, in seeking science and knowledge, in being harmless and helpful, in advancing human civilization, in being creative and making this world a better place, so that God will be proud of His creatures and their great achievements. The dark-hearted people, on the other hand, will follow the selfish whisper of Satan, so they spend their lives feeding their arrogance, killing others in the name of what they believe to be the exclusive true path, praying and carrying out all the orders word for word without using their minds and hearts at all. And by doing so, their souls will become empty and their prayers will bear no fruits because they do not really understand what they are doing or to whom they are praying. This will lead them more and more into the darkness of extremism so that they become dangerous, destructive and terrorists. They make the world we live in like a jungle and destroy its civilized achievements to please Satan.
So in this episode we revealed to you the top secret of holy books, and that is the duality of voices in every book, the good voice and the evil voice. We can hear you already calling Rad blasphemous, but don't be too quick to judge him, for we will give you striking proofs from every holy text in the coming chapters. And we will begin with the Torah of Moses.
In this episode we highlight the duality of voices in the Torah, the good voice and the evil voice.
The book of Exodus contains some stories of burnt offerings, as if a true God needed us to perform such organized parties before he would accept our prayers or to allow our communication with him. The true God doesn't ask to be worshipped, he only spreads advice and warnings in order to guide us out of the miserable mortal life into which our ancestors threw us.
In the book of Leviticus we find laws, prayers and rules on how to live our lives. And here the contradiction and the duality of voices are clearer than in any other part of the Torah. From chapter 1, it is clear to any reader with a sound mind that the Lord mentioned here is Satan and not God. Because the Lord is happy to be offered burnt sacrificed animals, if his offering is a burnt offering from the herd. An offering by fire of pleasing odor to the Lord.
Oh wow! Why the odor must be pleasing? Is God hungry, and does he need to be teased by the great smell of the burnt meat? If the offering was meant to be sacrificed to be fed later to the poor, we would understand that God was demanding it. But since it's just to be turned into smoke with pleasing odor, it's obvious here that Satan was having fun with people who practiced such stuff a long time ago. The great majority of Jews ceased performing such sacrifices by the 2nd century AD. Only a minority of Orthodox Jews keep practicing literally every word in this book that supposedly was given to Moses but, like all the other books, was actually written down dozens or hundreds of years after the prophet's death. It's also important to mention that sacrificial offerings were known in the ancient world and among the Hebrews a long time before the days of Moses.
Those same rituals are demanded once, twice, many times in the Torah. An animal or bird is to sacrificed, its blood shed on the walls of the altar, and its meat burned to please the Lord. The disturbing fact is that believers in such horrendous acts believe that they are making communion and peace with God. Oh dear! What kind of bloodthirsty God this is!
And God insists that he loves salty food, and insists that worshippers offer their sacrifices with salt. What is stranger is that only the priests and sons of Aaron are allowed to eat some of the offerings. This suggests that priests were taking advantage of people who gave the offerings to erase their sins. Sometimes a sin could be bigger than one sacrifice, and might require a variety of offerings. It sounds to me that this might depend on what kind of meat the priest fancied to eat that day. But among all these chaotic doctrines there is still some divine voice, and that appears when the true God advises people to never eat fat and blood. We all know today that it is unhealthy to consume such things. The voice of the true God returns again in chapters 10 and 11 to tell us which animals are healthy to eat and to forbid the consumption of animals that eat other flesh.
The angry God reappears in chapter 20, calling for the death of any person who worships another deity, instead of advising that such person be guided to the right way. And then there is a shocking call to kill the person who insults his parents. I just cannot believe that a mother would let people kill her son or daughter just because they had insulted her. Without doubt, Satan is not just speaking but singing out here. And then comes the death penalty for almost every adulterer and adulteress, without need for proof, or any consideration of whether there was some kind of blackmail, rape or forced sex going on. The same for gays. We just send people to death. No repentance. Yet strangely, if a man has sex with his sister, he gets a lesser punishment, excommunication. What a fair God we are dealing with here.
Chapter 21 is a set of rules for priests. Never shave or clean your face, just burn offerings in the fire. What a divine call. Do not marry widows or divorced women, only virgins. And if the daughters of priests sin, they should be burnt by fire. Again, the priests always seem to get what they want. This God also seems to be prejudiced against physically or mentally disabled people. In chapter 24, we go back ages to stone people accused of blasphemy.
Conclusion: the Torah is both a holy and unholy book. This means that you have to take the best of it and leave the rest, especially in today's world. In its own time, the book appeared fully holy, and that was how the priests led people astray for their own benefit, pretending they were fulfilling God's commandments. In this episode we will highlight the duality of voices in the Bible, the good voice and the evil voice.
Since the Old Testament of the Bible has almost same contents as the Torah, we shall move directly to the New Testament, according to which most of today's Christians practice their beliefs. We will give some proofs about the holy-unholy nature of the Bible. We quote some divine voices from the New Testament, contradicted by other satanic whispers.
Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart.
That was a good one, but does this coming paragraph sound merciful to you?
And if your eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to enter life with one eye than to have two eyes and be thrown into the fire of hell.
Jesus was hungry and went mad on a fig tree. Early in the morning, as Jesus was on his way back to the city, he was hungry. Seeing a fig tree by the road, he went up to it but found nothing on it except leaves. Then he said to it, "May you never bear fruit again." Immediately the tree withered. How nice this divine creature is. We thought he would always use his powers in a positive way. Why didn't he simply ask the tree to give him fruit at once, since he was telling his disciples that if they had faith they could move the mountains with one word?
Christians today insist on the pagan doctrine of Trinity, while in the book of Mark, Jesus said, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one."
Jesus was convincing people that their faith could achieve anything, and that they shouldn't care to die or to live when it comes to God's sake. Why then, in the book of Luke, when Satan challenged him to throw himself from a high place, did Jesus answer, "It is said, do not put the Lord your God to the test"?
Jesus said clearly in many books, "I have come to bring fire on the earth, and how I wish it were already kindled. But I have a baptism to undergo, and what constraint I am under until it is completed. Do you think I came to bring peace on earth? No, I tell you, but division." We tend to believe that these are truly Jesus's words, because a prophet of such magnitude would foresee and understand that his teachings would be falsified later from generation to generation, and that stupid people would divide from each other and follow blindly their arrogance and claim exclusivity of righteousness for themselves. Each party will be happy to claim that God is on its side.
These few examples from the Bible clearly show that the prophets were not here to redeem people or to set them free, but to remind us that we should take right action. They were only reminders, nothing more, nothing less. God is all. God is everywhere and certainly has neither children nor wives. People are being illogical when they claim to be God's children, because they are God's creatures and they won't have the luxury of joining God's family before they have justified their existence and proven that they deserve such honor.
That is why it is clear to people of understanding that Jesus was not God, nor a son of God. And Christians today must remember that Jesus is not the only son who doesn't have a biological father. And to this end, what we should keep from all the books of the Bible are the phrases that teach us how to be kind to each other and to love others as we love ourselves. All the other rituals and teaching in the book of Revelation are nothing but mumbo-jumbo, the words of priests who wanted fame and started speaking about their holy visions to get promoted in the church hierarchy, which has nothing to do with holiness. We believe that the papacy should be brought to an end because it associates creatures with the one and only Creator, and this is far removed from being righteous and faithful. In this episode we highlight the duality of voices in the Holy Quran, which was dictated by the Archangel Gabriel to Muhammad in the deserts of Arabia nearly 1,400 years ago. This extraordinary text invites careful rereading, because it includes a vast amount of information.
Murad spent months decoding it, and he believes that he found the key to understand it the way it should be understood. The Quran includes very strong messages, and unlike the two previous books, the Torah and the Bible, it rarely speaks about its prophet and often speaks about humanity and the universe in general. It's a scary book because its content contains striking evidence of its supernatural source, and much information that improves our knowledge and understanding of the divine plan, but it also includes a dangerous part which, if read by ignorant, unwise people, can lead to their becoming brainwashed and transformed into destructive killing machines.
The Quran confirms Murad's theory of duality of voices in the holy books in this verse, and we did not send before you any messenger or prophet except that when he spoke, or recited, Satan threw into it some whispers and wishful thinking. And in another verse Gabriel asked Muhammad and the Quran readers to be careful from Satan whispers. The angel said, when you read the Quran, you should at first seek refuge in God from Satan, the expelled.
Not only that, but also there is a Quran chapter titled Al-Tawbah, the repentance, which Muhammad asked his followers to not start it like all the other chapters. That means they should not start reading it within the name of God the most beneficent, the most merciful, which are the usual opening words of all the other chapters. And to no surprise, Al-Tawbah chapter is full of violent verses asking people to fight and kill the infidels.
We will show you the main verses that help you to understand its code. And we will leave it to you to draw your own conclusions.
Let us go through some examples of the two voices, so you may hear and see clearly the light from the dark.
And fight them until the religion, all of it, is for God. There shall be no compulsion in the religion. Fight them, God will punish them by your hands and will disgrace them and give you victory over them and satisfy the breasts of the believers. Invite to the way of your Lord with wisdom and good instruction, and argue with them in a way that is best. Indeed, your Lord is most knowing of who has strayed from his way, and he is most knowing of who is rightly guided. And now this verse, which we will call the conclusion of what we have been saying. Who listen to speech and follow the best of it. Those are the ones God has guided, and those are people of understanding.
After giving you few examples from the Quran, it is clearer than ever that you should read, listen and then decide by choosing the best of what have you heard or read. Is there any clearer proof of our freedom of choice than the duality deliberately embedded in holy books? The Quran contains great truths and at the same time, big tricks. And yet it is the only book among the holy three that offers some liberalism and freedom of choice.
When God advises us to give our life for his way, he doesn't mean that we should go and kill ourselves and others. He means that we should use our lifetime in seeking his way that is full of knowledge, science, art and beauty. This is his way. Peace is his way. Love is his way. Wisdom is his way. He created us, so he certainly doesn't need us. He is the rich of knowledge. He is the perfect in deeds. He is the complete. So when he calls us to his way, he is doing that for our sakes, not for his. Never forget that the Almighty can never be limited to one nation or one book or one religious sect. God is unlimited. Open your minds and hearts, and remember what the angel Gabriel told you in the Quran. Say, if the sea were ink for writing the words of my Lord, the sea would be exhausted before the words of my Lord were exhausted, even if we brought the like of it as a supplement. In this episode we highlight the duality in Buddha's teachings. Buddhism is where most people who run away from the trio of Judaism, Christianity, Islam find shelter. But the teachings of this religion, even if they look peaceful, are also superficial and very demanding. The Buddhists, who call themselves the enlightened ones, may not appear to be that close to the light once you have read carefully what they believe in.
Going through all the books about, or attributed to, Buddha, you start seeking answers to your questions about the universe, the soul, the body, life and death, and why we are here. But when you finish reading, you will end up asking more questions instead of having fed your knowledge with some answers. It is as if you are walking in a desert and, because of the heat, see a darkened space not far from you, and hurry towards thinking it is water. But when you arrive you find you have wasted your remaining energy running towards something fake, because in reality there is no water.
Of course there are some thoughts on which to agree with Buddhism, such as not getting attached to worldly fortune and preferring to serve others rather than serving our ego. But when you look at these teachings, you see how they are intended to put into one's mind the idea that there is nothing called birth and nothing called death, and that the world is an illusion. Excuse us, but that doesn't make sense, and if it does, then let's forget about Buddha and his books because they never existed except in our imagination.
Here is an example of such shallow belief from the main book of teaching of Buddha. Paragraph 2 of the chapter: The real state of things. For people, life is a succession of grasping and attachments, and then because of this they must assume the illusions of pain and suffering. We ask the Buddhists, when a Chinese communist officer burns you and hurts you and beats you, is your pain and suffering an illusion? If it is, then that's fine, and we need not worry about defending the rights of Tibet's people, because they don't feel pain and do not live in this fake world where everything is unreal.
This for us cannot be a divine teaching. Instead, it is the core of a satanic deception through which people lose trust in themselves and are asked to live an isolated life which, even if it is harmless, is also useless. It tries to convince us that we do not exist. How thankful we are then towards our Creator. Is there anything that could please our competitors among the angels and devils more than convincing the human being that he doesn't exist?
Wisdom reappears in the following chapter when it speaks of the middle way and advises that people should not lose themselves to extreme ideas. This is a great teaching. But when you look deep into the text, it once again becomes shallow, insisting that we should not get attached to anything at all. We believe we should get attached to helping each other. We should get attached to our Creator by using His gifts to us wisely. But this is not the Buddha's way. With Buddha you have to abandon everything. Fine. If that is the case, then let us first of all not attach any credit to his books.
Once more we see a prophet trying to teach people good things, but then contradicting himself. After bombarding his followers in the chapter called The Way of Purification with lessons on how to get rid of their pride, ego and arrogance and achieve a pure and peaceful mind, he tells them in the next chapter, The Good Way of Behavior, that only those who have received the Buddha's teachings and are training their minds and bodies by those teachings can be called truly good, modest and peaceful people. Modestly, and with no hint of pride, he gives himself and whoever follows him blindly the authority to judge people quickly. Buddha's words can be translated as follows: if you are a Buddhist, then you are good, and if you are not, then you are a bad person. But we say, only our Creator has the authority to judge us, not Buddha and the Buddhists.
Strangely, in the very next paragraph, the Buddha gives a lesson on how to choose our words with care so that they sound sympathetic rather than hateful. This immediately after telling us that righteousness lies exclusively in his teachings, in his teaching alone.
Another shocking example of arrogance can be found in the chapter Sacred Sayings, The Way of Practical Attainment. On a trip a man should travel with a companion of equal mind or one who has a better mind. One had better travel alone than travel with a fool. How arrogant can these people get? So instead of helping each other and teaching one another, we should categorize people by measuring their minds and judge them accordingly. This one can travel with me, and this one cannot, because my mind is bigger than his.
After giving you some examples from Buddha's books, it's strikingly clear that Buddha, who was giving the world anti-ego lessons, some of his words have shown us that he was probably one of the most egoists in the history of mankind.